Requesting everyone to settle down. We will start the grand final shortly.
Who's first?
So if everyone could kindly take their seats. First of all, a big thank you to the ArtCom and the team for CUFPDA for the 3 days of work. On behalf of all the teams as well as the judges from Dhaka, we've had a great time and it's been a pleasure being here. The 4 teams that will compete in the final are Brack University in opening government, IBTU Ronak and Michelle in opening opposition, closing government Adi and Miraz from North South University, and closing opposition Adiba and Tasmia from IBTU. Taking into account institutional clashes and everything, we will have a 4-person judging panel for the grand final. So we have Raiha, formerly of Dhaka University. We have Sajid Sahar, formerly of IUB. Myself, formerly of IUB, and chairing the panel with Tausif, formerly of CUFPDA. Motion is this house will levy an additional tax on men to finance scholarships, business loans, etc., accessible only to women as reparations for generations of oppression. This is the grand final. The teams need concentration, so to the judges, I would request audience to not make any noise during speeches and to keep your phones on silent. With that said, we'll start the final, beginning now.
Who's timekeeping? Hey, just right. Just done. Ready? Right, start.
We regret the fact that we live in such a society that no matter what we have been through, it is an unlevel playing field for women in all, right? The fact that after we live in such a society, can I just start it? Yeah.
When you have a snack,
Not exactly.
there's a cheaper amount of line.
Yeah. Sure. Just think.
But you can just go really loud if you want.
Yeah,
We can hear you. Podiumটাকে সামনে নিয়ে এসে জোরে জোরে কথা বলো। It's fine. Yeah. I think the
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Before starting the debate, we have a couple of notifications. Notification number 1: during the debates, please be silent because otherwise we have an interruptions. And B, whenever you guys walking into the middle of the rooms, make it silent as well. Thank you.
We regret the fact that in a society when women have been oppressed for over years and years, you can never ever have a field where it is level, right? The fact that this society we are talking about is unlevel. The fact that no matter how liberalistic ideas you have, no matter how well developed you are, still the ideology in a normal society makes it an unlevel playing field, right? The fact that when you basically start from, even if you have a twin as a parent, no matter how much liberalistic view you have, you still prefer a bit more to the child. So this means the women that come up in the society that from under the playing field, right? The hardship that they went through, the fact that this the woman that they couldn't even take decision, or even active decision against their better judgment. The fact that when they have to go through this, the fact that those people that come out of this must be rewarded, right? The fact that not only rewarded, the fact that we need to encourage them more so that they can come out of this bubble, this cycle of dependence they have, right? And that is why we believe it is our immediate duty as men to actually not just talk about wills, but actually bring change in in the forms of any kind of loans, any kind of scholarship that may belong in a university that will be only eligible for women, any kind of fund that will be only eligible for the women for their projects and whatnot, and basic important things. Men have to pay taxes amount that would be set by the government, but not only for women. Right? That is basic because of the fact that we need to reward these people, reward these women, just because the hardship they have gone through, because it is not easy for any woman to come out, and for the fact that you need to encourage them to actually make sure that this flow stops, this flow of women coming, we encourage them so that they will come out of this dependence. Right? Now, first things first, what happens in a patriarchal society, right? Why is this unlevel playing field? Simply because no matter how much we talk, still these ideas do exist. The first thing basically, if you go to any conservative people and talk about them, the first thing they're gonna say, look, still women depend on men. No matter how much you talk, no matter how much you talk, still you see this in a family, no matter how developed it is, still women depend on men. What do we do to come out of this, right? Even though these women who have worked so hard to actually topple the barriers that were put against them, the fact that sexism exists in all level forms, because and people that still come up, when you people hear these ideas, the cycle does not stop, it does exist. Simply because you see in a society that with the same qualification and same citizenship and whatnot, the fact that if two people are have same level of skill, you see people going for choosing men over women, right? You can see that in education sector, in job, because the fact that there is a huge gender pay gap, and also for the fact that women do not get the business opportunities they want, simply because of this, as this bias already exists, to make sure that women does not depend on men. It is high time that we do this to break this cycle of dependence, to make them independent. You need to actually undergo active, aggressive, real change in real time. You see, no matter how much male feminists coming up and talking about their will, that yes, they want to do good for the woman and whatnot. Okay, no matter how much you talk, until or unless you do something, the cycle will not change, right? Why do you need real change in real time? Only because of the fact that women are suffering right now. You will be doing nothing to the people that have gone through the hardship and actually come up. No matter just talking for them won't do any shit, because you are actually at the end of the day, no matter how much they come, that same certain thing and same certain bias is still upon them. So just talking about wills and whatnot will not do any change. The only way to bring change is actively actually let them give the weapons so that they can fight at a level playing field, right? That's the only thing that we want. You can understand, no matter what change, when we talk about change, there will be protests, right? The fact that there will be people who will be against it. But the fact that this is true for every kind of social change where we talk about. So no matter when people don't want to change. To create change, you need to do something. Just talking about and doing nothing wouldn't be the thing. To make sure to actually give them a playing field, you have to start doing, and that will be the actually taking steps right now, and that's the only way you can do to actually give them a playing field, right? Not taking steps. Okay. Now moving on like why the people why just support is not the only thing that we need, but the fact that everything needs to be changed. The fact that you see the 40 for women to actually break this cycle, this is the only way. No matter how much you go through, you see the cycle stops. Cycle comes over and over. To actually break the cycle, to break that chain that holds the woman in the first place, you need this active change in real time. Why in real time? Because otherwise, no matter what amount of change that would be coming, the people that have gone through will not be actually benefited or will not be actually rewarded. Now, what have we covered until now? fact that firstly beginning we have shown you how this society that we live in, no matter how liberalistic ideas we have, no matter in the best cases, in the best of scenarios, you see there are people that would actually not encourage women. The fact that these women just take decisions against their will, the fact that the amount of, if you see two certain individuals, a guy and a male, a guy and a female in same study position, the female had to overcome a lot of burdens and whatnot. That simply gives them that moral obligation for us to give them a reward, and the fact that this reward would encourage a lot of upcoming women. The fact that no matter how much we talk, you need the actual moral obligation, because if you don't actually encourage change for the cycle to break, you need to actually give them the opportunity to fight it. We have shown you how the cycle of dependency will be eradicated. You need to make them independent, and then only you can talk about real change and whatnot. And thank you.
The House recognized the contribution from the first speaker of OG. Now moving to the opposition's debate. Here.
Feminism was never punitive. For men to treat women equally, it's important that we adopt acceptable means. Ladies and gentlemen, understand this chemistry. What's the problem here? It's not about lack of opportunities. Opportunities do exist in the current status, right? It's just the problem that women are not connected to the opportunities. That is, women lack access to the opportunities, and that is something that's been driven by the patriarchal societies. To understand, the problem here is not really economical, but more of a social perspective of understanding what the problems women face with, right? Because even in the 21st century, we see different societies individually or collectively obstructing women from gaining these opportunities as a whole, and that's something we find very complicated. Go to importance. We see the Prime Minister come up and talk about, give a huge narrative of how telling that currently women are being dependent on men and they are trying to change the narrative. So what change do they really bring when they actually try to force men to contribute financially to women's success? Because ultimately it goes back onto the same narrative that women are dependent on men, even financially, through the taxes that are going to be levied upon, right? But do understand, what are the claims of the current society we have, the claims of men? For example, the problematic attitude that men face to discrimination. For example, we have seen that with the hashtag #MeToo, a lot of men came up and spoke about the problems and the discriminations we face, which are quite legit. But there are certain ridiculous notions, for example, how men face more discriminations, or there are feminist movements in the society, right? They go on to complaining how there is no meritocracy. They go on to say how affirmative actions really are important and some discrimination against men. And this attitude are extremely problematic because it hinders women from going on, or the flow of the movement they're having, right? So where does this narrative come from? Where does this originate? It comes from that fact that discrimination is not exclusive to men. It does not have any gender. Because people go on to say that claim that men even have faced higher discriminations in certain aspects. But do understand, the problem here, the reason if you go back to this, is because men or the patriarchal society in general cannot internalize the concepts of affirmative actions, or everything that's been done to improve the society, right? For example, even in the 21st century, we see that rape still occurs, even in Hollywood. Even we see that the violation of body privacy is still being violated even in the best of societies, even in this particular century, right? The idea to protect women comes as a burden on them. That is, they see something that's additional, that's something unfair on their side, right? Because it ultimately shows that to them the society unfairly pushes women up, and which goes on the way that compromises men's meritocracy and whatnot. So what does this result in? The worst case scenario, men go on to deny violence. Men go on to think that the status quo is enough, and that's something problematic. So how do we bring solution? How do we bring a change in here? The first solution we tell you is that men needs to internalize a lot of concepts here. We do it through multiple ways, right? For example, if we have to define the societies, let's talk about the relatively educated people. So what do we do? We educate them. We initiate discourse. We initiate interaction among the genders, and we give people opportunities and let them understand so that they can empathize, right? So even in our worst case scenario, we have a better understanding. We have discourse. Men can put themselves empathize with the women who are in their lives, right? But in their best case scenario, we still see that the cooperative men will be despising their idea because they see that the hard-earned money that they have, because they have to divide, because they have to pay certain debts, is something they find very repurposing, right? But to understand that the class who are underprivileged, that the men who are underprivileged, which is more important, to understand that in this particular society, in this particular lower economic class, we see that women are more vulnerable. Women face more obstructions. For example, these are women living in villages. These are women who have less access to opportunities and probably societies which are very, very superstitious, right? So how do we do this? We ask men to be very, very cooperative. For example, especially when you're dealing with religious clergies, imagine the immense power these religious clergies have, right? We go on to tell them to quote say from the Quran and tell them to empathize with women, especially to understand how Begum Rokia brought change in society, not through going out and complaining against it, right? She told them, hey, why don't you educate your wife so that she can write a letter to you? And that's something effective and worked out in the longer run, right? Which we think is extremely important. So that's how you do. You try to play with the minds of men, with the minds of patriarchal society in ways that would create more empathy to society, right? Otherwise, we face more repercussions, because when you have more repercussions, it's just a wrong narrative, which goes on to show that women still will be able to access opportunities that if they won't have freedom in the very first place. So how do we bring change in society? We bring change in society through affirmative actions, through preferential access. For example, we see like women getting into Ivy League schools because Ivy Leagues now have this special preferences for women to understand, recognize their struggles, and give them better opportunities. We will have more NGOs coming up and to have programs that's only accessible to women. We'll have women's rights. For example, we have seen how women's rights groups are not defensive and are probably aggressive enough to figure this out. We still have seen the feminism, the three waves of feminism and how it worked out in the longer run. And for changing that, we have to initiate discourse, right? The right kind of conversations for men to understand the problems that are being faced by women. We have to show them role models and through education that can show them exactly where the problem is. But more importantly, to understand that we have a set of men who are in the middle ground, right? Who are willing to cooperate with the women and who are willing to lead them in the future, right? But to understand, the moment you push them to Levi, the moment you push to Levi and text on these people, is the point that they see that this becomes a burden, right? Because I think that they're already doing their bit, that it's already enough and nothing else should be done. So when they do this, ultimately it goes on to lead to activism fatigue, right? They think that whatever they have done is enough and nothing should be done extra more, right? So in this worst case scenario, our worst case scenario, we at least have more empathy. In this best case scenario, they lose on the middle ground who could have actively done something more and whose perception could have been changed. But to understand what happens more to activism fatigue, right? The worst way possible is like people go on to be being blindsided, which means people think that they have already contributed a lot of their hard-earned money. They think that women's problems are probably not important, but women's problems are solid economics, right? For example, we have seen that women have been banned because of the exclusive structure, which is less of a problem now, but more because of the society, which stands as the biggest bar. This blindsidedness can go on to obstruct the sort of a problem they're talking to. Even when they have Levi texts upon there, we still that despite the opportunities that exist, women will still face a social bar that goes on to obstructing them from gaining access to this particular opportunities. And we see that this is something very problematic in the long run and goes on to show that nothing changes in their status. In our worst case scenario, ladies and gentlemen, we change perception. We change people to set in the right direction and initiate the right discourses that are more effective in the longer run. And which is why we need this.
The House recognized the contribution from the possession bench. Now we go to the second speaker from the OG.
Am I audible without the mic? Goodwill only gets you so far, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't have the resources necessary for a follow-through, your commitment to a social goal remains exactly that. A vague concept left up in space where you wish you could have done enough without translating into actual results. If you want women to have the ability to gain independence for themselves, to begin executing their choices regarding their own personal agency. What to study, where to go, how much to spend, where to live. You have to first give them the abilities and the tools necessary to make those choices. You give those women an education so as they have the knowledge to make those choices, and then you give them the financial independence through a job through which they can afford to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, of all the wishes and expectations and all of the hopes that they have for a transitioning society remain exactly that, until you have a system and a mechanism in place to do that, which is exactly why you need to pass this motion. But let's talk about aspirations and ideas and changes for a second before we move on, right? But the first rebuttal. Understand this, ladies and gentlemen. The primary thing, they're not mutually exclusive concepts. You can run a system where you have an information campaign, right? If you want to build or create sensitivity training, you want to sit a bunch of feminists down across from a feminist icon and let them have a dialogue about whether or not necessary changes are going to happen, fine, do it. At the same time, ensure that that feminist can come to college so that she can speak to a room full of feminists to try and change their mind, or to speak to an average municipal person and try to change their mind, right? In order to do that, she needs to have the resources to do it. She needs to be given a scholarship that her patriarchal parents or patriarchal society is probably not going to give her, right? So how do you do that? You levy taxes against the most dominant force of economic growth in your society, likely because they get the largest amount of money. The men, then you transition it off to them, and that's how you reach aspirational goals. It's not a mutually exclusive system. We don't exactly understand how that they're getting to that conclusion. More to the point, even if you're going to deal with that sort of an issue, they don't have an argument against the moral and principle arguments that we make on two levels, right? First, Rahib specifically told you about how the average woman in most societies is extremely conditioned from the very childhood to make concessions to the patriarchy. You're not going to study STEM because, hey, you're a girl, you're likely not going to do very well at it. You're likely not going to go out late at night, even if it's a fantastic opportunity with a business meeting for a guy, because, hey, you're a girl and you're probably going to be unsafe in a public space. These women who come to the point of actively asking for a scholarship or actively asking for a business loan have gone through all the necessary steps for ages, from the ages between 0 to whatever age that they are to getting the scholarship, of actively fighting that stance, right? You have a moral obligation, not just to reward that fight that she made, but to encourage more women to make the same fight and create a safety net where women know that they will not just be bashed out and lose out if they have to make a difficult fight. It actually does two things. You're not just morally rewarding her, but you're encouraging more and more women to participate along that system, a moral argument that they have refused to engage with. More to the point, the second moral argument that they have refused to engage with in this house today, right? The fact remains, ladies and gentlemen, the balanced playing fields are so skewed. We're talking about practically 3,000 years of the patriarchy that have kept in place barriers so that women cannot naturally access the points necessary in order to gain sustainable growth for change. What does this mean, ladies and gentlemen? Look at the gender wage gap. For every $1 that a man makes, the average woman in the world makes 77 cents. That means for the same amount of work I put in, Adi's probably likely to going to get paid more for that, right? So that's a problem with me necessarily, because I'm not able to afford the same things and the same opportunities that he is. If Adi has a kid, that kid is likely going to go to a better school than mine would, and God help me if that's a girl. I'll ask it for a second time, because that means that girl is generationally put down twice, right, ladies and gentlemen? So that's the sort of problem and a moral obligation that we have to correct. That Rana Paya did not, Michelle did not correct but before we move on the next video.
Yes, fight for wage equity and to solve the inherent attitudes and perceptions of men towards women can only be changed when you show how women are being affected at first.
Yeah.
But that dynamic changes when you make it seem as if men are already playing their bit by having their hard-earned money being exclusively allocated to these unique opportunities towards women.
No, the message that you said is that for years you managed to screw me over, and now I'm taking my bounds due. Call it punitive if you want. I'm okay with that because I get the result I need to. More to the point, the average person isn't going to look at your college degree and go, whoa, a dude pay for that. They're going to look at the college degree and call you a boss because you managed to get a degree, and then they're going to give you a job. That's the transition of the results that we want. That's the kind of conversation that they have. As to the average meninist that they're afraid of, ladies and gentlemen, if you ask me to halt my steps to progress for a person who essentially believes that I should not have the right to an equal and equitable existence, what are you asking me to do? You're asking me to halt the progress for the very necessary steps I need to secure to get any sort of a basic quality of life, in the hopes that a person who triggered against my very emancipation to somehow change their minds. Ladies and gentlemen, recognize that in this balance of powers, I would rather reward this woman who's actively trying to cause change than fear triggering a men's rights activist who would likely never turn to my side anyway. For God's sake, these men actively believe that men are more oppressed across the world against them compared to women, despite the fact that there's an overwhelming amount of evidence against this theory, right? So that is a problematic claim that we don't see a necessary means to protect. So now let's look at the other things in the house, the extraneous things that haven't come about so far. Essentially, ladies and gentlemen, we've told you one more basic thing along with those principal themes and everything. You only have a sort of independence once you have the resources to make that sort of change, right? What does that mean? If you're going to claim the ability to go out and have a job, of going out and getting some sort of financial independence, you need to prove to your employer that you're sustainably worthy of getting it. You need that degree. If you're going to get away from your abusive husband or your abusive boyfriend or your parents who don't want you to have a job or don't want you to have a social life or don't want to have an advantage, you need the financial security to get your own place, right? Unfortunately, the system right now is so far ahead, paved against women, that these changes don't occur. So far, whatever talks that the government has had of having conversations with racist people, of turning some sort of families against them, are likely not going to happen, or if in the best case circumstances they happen, they're too slow. So, a couple of things. Anything they propose can mutually go alongside this. We're not particularly afraid of triggering a bunch of MRI activists. What we believe is that women who work hard need to be rewarded as hard and encouraged as hard. You let the motion pass. Thank you.
Now recognize the contribution from the open bench. Now welcoming the second speaker from the opening opposition. Here.
Had it not listened to Michelle's speech, you would have partially understood, or at least attempted to understand the current world that we're living in. Recognize that opportunities to women these days, it's not like they don't exist. Even when you look at the most rural, most remote village in a country where women's rights are not that accepted, you don't have any legislative barriers that prevent women from going to school. There is no saying that you can't go and have a job. There's no saying that you can't govern your own life. What happens, though, is that these perceptions are socially ingrained, which means the one preventing you from exploring your opportunities, the one preventing you from going to school and living the job of your dreams, the one preventing you from marrying the man of your dreams by your own volition is most likely your parents, is most likely your neighbors, is most likely your relatives, all of whom are living in that patriarchy, are living and resonating those very thoughts which have shunned women down. The problem is, these opportunities exist, but women are systematically constrained from accessing these opportunities because these attitudes haven't changed. Why have these attitudes not changed, and why is this important? Recognize now that there are numerous problems in that entire play, something that, once again, Michelle showed you, but absolutely no analysis or no acknowledgement even from your part. Firstly, the fact that women are thought to be inherently less capable than men. This occurs across a wide variety of spectrum, which means women themselves doubt their own abilities to sometimes explore their opportunities even when opportunities are present, but sometimes even their families themselves pressure them into leaving their jobs because they don't think that they won't be as capable as men when it comes to taking up leadership positions or gaining as much salary to sustain the entire family. Heck, the idea of women being able to sustain her own family independently is a very alien thought to most individuals. So the concept is, once again, you consolidate this narrative by showing the world how for women to succeed, it can only happen when men sacrifice their paychecks,
when hard-earning farmers and hard-earning male workers who probably go back home to sustain their very wives and daughters are those individuals who now have to spend at least 20 to 30% of their money to the state for exclusive opportunities for women. These men wanted to be empathetic. These women were on the verge of changing and recognizing the struggle of the entirety of womanhood from their very relatable characters in their homes, the struggles of their daughters and the struggles of struggles of their daughters and the struggles of their mothers. But these men are the ones who are now pushed back because they can't empathize once you take away their hard-earning money to the state and you make it seem that they have done their part. That's the problem, right? Because men always think that they do their part the very instance that they allow a woman to be in their space. Most men who have problematic mindsets would think that we have done enough by including women in our boardroom meetings. We have done enough by making sure that there are gender parities. That's the problem. Most problems affecting women these days can't exactly be tied on paper because they're not something really visceral. These are attitude changes. The idea that a male worker makes a comment at a random moment because he thinks that her only work in that particular boardroom is because she is a very attractive individual, or the fact that her boss arbitrarily does not promote you simply thinking that that individual is incapable. Even if you look at more rural societies about how a most very talented young girl is asked to just leave her education after one point not because there are avenues after that, but because the entire society thinks that they are not capable. These attitudes change when you educate and empathize with men. When you make them understand it's financially lucrative for these women to go out. How have we changed perceptions in villages? We worked with NGOs and made sure that there are women entrepreneurs, that there are seed funds available for women to come up with their own businesses and come up with their own ideas. Why did the men agree, despite the fact that they were very patriarchal in nature? They agreed because they saw an opportunity when it came to more economic opportunity. Because these women could now contribute to the family funds and substantially change their lives. But obviously that wasn't the very point at which they changed their mindset about women. They changed their mindset about women when these women, who were given these opportunities, which do exist right now, and exist because certain men empathize with these women, and that empathy is only available when you don't push them over the edge. Those women turn out to be role models, and those are the individuals who affect these women. Why does it not happen in their world? Because men think that they have done their part. But more importantly, you shove it upon men that they are the ones who are faulty and problematic all the freaking time. We think that's an immensely problematic narrative, especially when there are many men who are actively capable of supporting women in many initiatives at the right time. But understand this. Also, we think that another big problem is that men actively think that women make an unnecessarily big deal out of their own problems. Which means, despite the fact that we have active attempts to teach men about why rape is bad or why sexual assault is bad, all of these things are internalized. We think it's problematic, one, when you don't have a significant amount of your population who doesn't understand why these problems are so big and needs to be solved right now. You don't teach them to internalize these values and push a more series of punitive measures on these individuals. It's likely to make them more retaliatory in nature. And retaliation doesn't only mean flocks of men coming down to the streets and shouting that we are men in this and we have a cause. This means that you systematically disenfranchise women in other areas, which means that your boss or your co-worker is less cooperative, which means your student peer is less cooperative, which means as your family, you're more unlikely to send your woman to work because you think that you've done your best.
Right. So if you're talking about how a mere increase in taxation will make this go so backward, even in affirmative actions where women have seats in parliament, it's at the cost of one man getting in. So if you want to appease to these people, you're never ever going to get over them.
Yeah, an ideal world would be one where women go up and earn these places by their own merit, and that's the world that we're slowly moving forward. But recognize right now, when affirmative actions do exist, we would rather use those measures in order to have the opportunities given out to women. Because we show them why gender parity is the first big thing that needs to be solved, and then we slowly move towards social attitudes and other things. But the point of time you pull as their economic solvency is the point at which they strike out of the discussion. They don't particularly belong to these conversations anymore, and they completely shift up, which are incredibly problematic. Recognize that your informational campaigns can only work when structural barriers can be made to seem visceral. When you show that women are actually victims of this years of hatred and years of oppression. We think that can only change once you make these men empathetic. But when you change this informational campaign to one which is accusatory in nature, you cannot change the impending power structures which exactly thrive on their ability to feel proud and egotistic. You push them back, make them more powerful, make them shut off their shelves, make everything seem like a Western agenda, and basically shift out of the currently existing opportunities as well. Which means that institutions right now perceive your entire campaign to make lives better for women as a threat for existing power structures, tag everything as Western and invasive and alien, and the world is a far, far worse place for women, which we absolutely abhor. Thank you.
The House recognized the contribution from the both of the upper side. Now moving to the lower house debate, will come the first speaker from the closing government side. Yeah.
Broadway's speech would make you believe that affirmative action in and of itself is wrong. That quotas make men suffer, which is why you take them away. We think their argument was not specific as to why you oppose a mere tax that is not 20 to 30%, because you're literally taxing half the population, which means you wouldn't need to have like a huge tax amount on farmers who don't pay taxes to begin with. We don't think like it would create a visceral reaction among men to begin with. What are the things that we will talk about from CG? We'll talk about first as to why individuals do not change under their model, because they have not shown any mechanism whatsoever. They have relied on the goodwill of individuals, and they have relied on the goodness within these individuals to change, and no mechanism whatsoever. But on a more harmful level, the mechanism, the little bit of mechanism they have shown is increasingly even more problematic. What is that so? You go to rural areas and you explain as to why women need education so that she can send you a letter, which means that you only educate women so that they can serve you, which is to say that the entire narrative about saying that, look, you need to teach women so that women can do something for you, is that the entire idea of female education is for men to be served, which is to say that the entire narrative about female development all over becomes a product that men own, and we have a problem with that. We have several problems with that. But what did Ronald tell you? He comes up and tell you that, look, mostly parents are the ones who do not send into their daughters to school, and even though there are no legislative barriers and attitude problems that exist. First of all, I think most parents who do not send their children to school, daughters to school, it's not because they're not all of them are actively sexist, but when they realize that on a completely utilitarian basis, when they have less money available, they would rather send their son who's going to become a bread earner. We think for the first time ever, we provide scholarship to these families, to these females who cannot go to school to begin with, which is to say that you change the narrative and the opportunity for education for all of those daughters who have similar parents at their homes. But second of all, Roy also tells you that, look, these are attitude problems to begin with. We'll tell you as to why these attitude problems exist in every sort of female development programs that exist, right? So even if there's a quota in the parliament, a man would feel like that individual is taking away my seat, and that's problematic as well. Ronapai's entire case is based upon opposing affirmative action and not taxation to begin with. What are we going to talk about? First, I think a debate like this reserves a principal justification. How is this consistent with any other forms of reparations that we pay to individuals, whether it be Jews or any other race to begin with? What do we acknowledge? We acknowledge that are there any structure that was unfairly laid upon that is essentially advantaging, benefiting a group of individuals, which is to say that men are benefiting of an unfair structure that exists today. How is this unfair? It's unfair because of the reasons that while women have to struggle for the basic rights, men became pioneers, men became leaders, men became examples of change makers and individuals who were more productive within the status quo, which meant that during that time, women had to struggle for the most basic rights that individuals deserve and could not afford an education, could not afford any sort of emancipation whatsoever, which is to say that you shun the development of women to thousands of years later. We think women would be much better if within those formative years, women didn't have to struggle for their basic rights to begin with.
Yeah.
But moreover, like upper would have you believe that wage gap is a problem. No, it's much more conclusive, right? Because of the idea that you earn more than a woman, you have to give some of it away to individuals as well. Which is to say, on a secondary level, it's also principal justification. Third, I think like the idea of men developing their businesses and whatnot is based upon oppression of women. How is that so? Because first of all, it's based upon the degradation of women, which is to say that if you have to sell a burger, if you have to sell a car, you objectified women. You took them to the level where they were only objects of sexual pleasure, where their only role for a woman in an advertisement was to have that burger in a sexy way. Which is to say that you established on the benefited of the established gender roles that essentially made women more appeasing, that essentially made women more made it an obligation for women to look more sexy in a lot of cases. But moreover, you made sure that you control the media and essentially created those gender roles which made women look like individuals who were too sensitive, who were too complex to be understood. Which is to say that you created the narrative that men are like women are not as objective as men. But fourthly, you created boys' club in Silicon Valley and essentially made sure that women systematically could not deserve any sort of opportunity whatsoever. You had boys' clubs where you smoked up, where you talked about women, where you had strippers in those meetings, and you essentially made them not be a part of your culture. But on a fifth, you were complicit to every sort of rape culture that existed. You could have changed them, but you didn't. So what do we change, right? What are the reactions that men have? First of all, I think a lot of these changes. First of all, I think our policy is significantly better than quotas and every other thing that exists currently. Why is that so? Because it's the first time when you're paying for first of all, when you're paying for women, the idea that is inherently inherited is that women till now only lacked resources. Which is to say that once you realize that your payment is essentially making a woman outrank you, which is to say your payment is essentially making sure that a woman can get more marks than you in an exam, you realize that it was never about a woman being incompetent, but rather the woman lacking resources. Which is to say, it's much better than quotas because you feel that this woman was handed the job. She did not have to go to a school and outrank me and work for that scholarship. But moreover, I think the idea of taxation is that it allows tax breaks. Which is to say, and why is this important? Because if a corporation realizes that they can hire enough number of women to make sure that they can get those tax breaks, or individual men feel if they can bring significant changes within their community to accommodate women going to job, to make sure that there is better night policing within their areas, they can get those tax breaks at the end of the day and essentially save up on that. But moreover, I think individuals realize that at the end of the day, what does a man care more about patriarchy? His or her money, which is his money, right? Which is to say that individual now has a stake, not a claim, but rather a stake that if I'm paying my taxes, there needs to be visible changes. Which is to say, for the first time, governments go out of their way to make men feel that women are getting the best of those tax money and getting jobs at the end of the day. Which is to say, government comes up with more government job opportunities. They come up with statistics that look, the tax that men are paying are essentially giving a lot of economic returns at the end of the day. Which is to say, the most patriarchal and sexist man feels that his taxation has essentially increased GDP, gotten more money, and given him a job which has been orchestrated by a large working force. We believe we should win this debate. Thank you.
I'll recognize the contribution from the CG, now moving to the CEO bench. Yeah.
For every man on the street who has ever stared at my books or my comments, I have found at least one or two aunties who tell me that I should have put on better clothes and I should have been less of a person putting out, and it's my fault for being oppressed. What I'm trying to say is that the assumption that oppression against women is a men-specific problem is an assumption that we need to deal with first of all. The problem of oppression of women is not something that only men are responsible for. More importantly, the problem of oppression is not about whether or not women manage to set enough examples in society, rather it's about how women are perceived. Women are perceived as the weaker creature, as the weaker sex. They're perceived as people whom it's okay to oppress as long as you pay for it or make up for it in some other way. Because hey, even if you're oppressing your wife, at least she gets to live in your house and live on your money and whatnot, right? The moment you pass the bill that the government is trying to pass today, you further strengthen that message. You strengthen the message that it's okay to oppress a woman as long as you make up for it later by paying a particular sum of money. In doing so, not only do you send the wrong message, but you also put a monetary value on a woman's suffering, which to begin with puts people further and further away from being able to truly understand just the extent of how bad the suffering has been for women. You devalue what the person has gone through, and you send a limited responsibility message where you tell men that they do their part as long as they pay enough taxes, and that is equivalent to something that makes up for a woman's struggles, right? So what happens that the government tries to talk about how access is going to improve everything, how women being able to set examples through the existence of more resources will change everything. Now understand that there is a disconnect between resources and between women's ability to access them. I live alone, and every time I try and go to rent a house, there are women, men, and all sorts of landlords suspecting me and not wanting to give me a house simply because I'm a woman, and what if I'm running an undercover prostitution ring? That is the kind of difficulty and structural barrier that a woman has to face every day in her life in society, from men and women alike. So in that society, when you perpetrate the idea that a woman's suffering can be made up for simply by the creation of more resources, you don't necessarily remove the amount of difficulty and the structural barriers that obstruct that woman's path from her house to getting that particular education or getting that particular job. First of all, let's talk about why it's unfair to place this burden on men to begin with, right? Taxation is inevitably a burden, and it's not theirs, and it's not solely men who are responsible for this. Moreover, women have faced generations and generations of oppression, and we acknowledge that. But understand that just because many men in society have oppressed women for a long time, it is not okay to put a blanket taxation on every single man in society, some of whom might even be actual feminists, and to paint them as criminals and to expect that they are supposed to pay for something they did not even do. That is synonymous to saying that we should hate everybody who's from Pakistan because their forefathers decided to oppress our forefathers, and therefore now it becomes their descendants' responsibility to fix the problem. Furthermore, what you do by passing this bill is that you discourage men who are feminists. Men who want to stand up for the rights of women are now painted as criminals who have to pay taxes as a punishment for what their forefathers have done for men. Who are the people who could have brought a change in society for women? These men who are supposedly the oppressors. Now, if you deter these men from trying to do good for women by telling them that despite being feminists, they are supposed to suffer equal punishment as all of those other oppressors who have oppressed women for a long time, you discourage feminism on part of men. More importantly, understand that oppressors come from all classes of society. There are educated men, there are uneducated men. When you have an uneducated farmer who's a misogynist, why on earth would you go and charge that farmer a hefty tax when you could go and tell that guy that, look, your wife is a person, your wife is someone who deserves to be treated well? Because understand that that the women who are oppressed, all levels of women suffer oppression, yes, but statistics show that the highest amount of most aggressive oppression happens especially in underprivileged classes, where men are not educated enough to understand why a tax is being imposed for them. When you give these men a tax, what you do is you take a certain amount of money from them, and you expect them to learn the lesson of a woman or human. You don't actively do anything to teach that man why he is wrong to oppress a woman to start with. Moreover, what happens is these men who are already misogynists, now having to pay additional taxes for women, become further aggressive towards women, become further oppressive towards women. Understand that just because my husband is forced to pay a government mandated tax that goes into a common fund for all women of the country, it does not mean that he is now going to allow me to go to university or go to a particular job because he is already a misogynist, and by giving him a tax and not teaching him anything, you only increase his aggression further, you increase his fury further. So essentially what you do is that, first of all, the oppression still remains if it doesn't get worse. The problem solving becomes limited because you shift focus from the actual perception problem to
feminists who had a really good shot of changing the scenario for women in society, right? So let's talk about what the unique nature of academic and professional scholarships are. Understand that academia and profession are two of the key tools of empowerment for women, right? The government comes up and tells us how women don't get perceived equally as men because they fail to set previous examples that men have been able to set. But understand that the moment a woman succeeds in her career in academia only because a man has decided to fund it, her education, or because the man has funded a particular scholarship that she must get access to, that woman's credibility and capabilities are highly doubted. Because the only reason she gets to be in this particular scenario is because she got a scholarship that was based on men paying for her. At that moment, women who deserve to be celebrated for the achievements they have made, women who broke the glass ceiling and who could perhaps inspire and change a lot of bad perceptions against women in society, those women's achievements are all undervalued and their credibilities are questioned, which completely defeats the purpose of women being able to set an example. What you essentially do in their best case scenario is you set the feminist agenda thousands of years back, and you tell people that women cannot be powerful enough through the tools of academia and profession until and unless men pay for them. And understand that access tools still exist in today's society. The only reason women don't get there is because there is a fundamental structural barrier problem and a fundamental perception problem in society. So instead of trying to tell men that the only thing they can do is pay taxes for a woman, instead of telling men that they can make up for oppression by paying for a common scholarship fund that a rural woman might not even get to access, what you should do instead is tell men why it's wrong to do what they're doing, tell women why it's wrong to do what they're doing in terms of oppressing other women, and change the social perception rather than extract money for a cause that is not going to help women in any way. Thank you.
The House recognized the speech from CEO. Now moving to the last speaker from the government, that is the closing government with 10.
No one's going to stop telling anyone anything. We think education curriculum will still teach students about how men have oppressed women. We think we'll still have those discussions that Tasmia wants us to have. The problem is those discussions haven't resulted in any direct actions. You haven't given us examples of direct actions in the very first place. We have been having these bloody discussions for the last few generations. They're still not worked. So you can't come up and run a fluffy case and tell me, oh my god, we need more discussions, without telling me how those discussions actually result in any sort of gratitude whatsoever. First of all, the principal engagement on this debate that CG brought up, and how was it engaged to? So she talks about why it's unfair to put a blanket ban on so many individuals, because not all men are bad. Definitely we agree, but not all Americans were slave owners. Some of them weren't slave owners, but they still benefited from the oppression of black people. They still bought the cotton shirts that those black people made within those sort of situations. Not all Germans were participated in the Holocaust, but you still do it because your forefathers were complicit to it in the very first place. So yes, definitely, it's not blanket, but there is reasonable space to impose this reparation on them to begin with. But on a secondary level, the current generation that is living here right now does benefit from the oppression of women. Miraz and I, at some point of our lives, have benefited from something that our sisters weren't given, but we were given. For example, the permission to go to Thailand and participate in a debate tournament, something that my sister would have never gotten a permission for. So do not tell me, Tasmia, that men right now, all men right now, don't get some sort of benefit of the oppression of women in the very first place. Ladies and gentlemen, reparations are a real thing. But the thing about the principle is, she only questioned the credibility of it and not the basis of it that Miraz gave you. That how men have oppressed, please. Men have literally oppressed women in so many areas, businesses, by objectifying them, by commodifying them, how they have paid women less, and they've benefited of it. No, engagement to that principle and the very first place. I'll ask it from you, definitely. First of all. Secondly, then the debate becomes about discussions in general, and which word gives you a better reaction to certain things. First of all, you can't really tell me that we are imposing a monetary quota on women, on women's suffering. Because see, at the end of the day, we still pay reparations to the Jews. You can't put a monetary quota on the Holocaust as well. We do that. That's one. Your argument isn't an excuse to not do anything at all. If it's not proportional enough, fine, let's make it proportional enough. But that's not an argument that we shouldn't do it at all in the very first place. Secondly, the reaction that it's likely to have is going to be better under our world in the very first place. Why? Like multiple reasons given by mirrors. Not all people are sexist in the very first place. There are lots of farmers that you talk about who have to make that critical choice of sending either a son or a daughter to school. And more often than not, they send that son because they don't have enough money. Under our model, these fathers have the scholarships to send their daughters to school. So we are mobilizing this part of the population who in the past had no accessibility to these sort of resources in the very first, I will ask it from you, in the very first place. We think at that point of time, we help these sort of people in the very first place. Secondly, Mira's idea of tax breaks. How? Because it's a tax system, we allow tax breaks as well. Tax breaks are allowed when these women actively, this means no. And this, like, this sort of tax breaks happen within this sort of situation when these sort of men actively work to make sure that women are comforted within their communities. Like, give them employment, give them jobs, set up night schools for women, right? So then men collectively, to get a break from this taxation, do these sort of things. No engagement to that whatsoever as well within this sort of situation as well, right? But Mira also gave you that analysis of how right now men know that these sort of money that's being invested behind women is being invested for good cause. That in, like, you know, these women are building roads for your community, are building hospitals for your community, or they're like increasing the GDP of the community or the country in the very first place. That goes on to show that my money isn't being wasted, but rather my money is like being used to like improve the situation of the country. Something that we're more than happy to willing to take, and something that increases respect in the very first place, right? But the ultimate core question of the debate is, how do we change mentality? How do we empathize? First of all, this debate isn't about men's rights movements in the very first place, because these people are beyond appeasement. They feel that they are the vulnerable group in the society, that women are ruining their chances. We don't think they're part of the debate in the very first place. The people that are part of the debate have more respect under our world. Why? Because yes, you will know that, for example, if someone goes into class next day and he sees a woman sit beside him, yes, my father's taxation money led her to being in the classroom. But when she gets an A, when she gets valedictorian, when she leads the debate team, that's when he realizes, yes, my father's money bought her the seat, but it didn't buy her the A, it didn't buy her the credentials, it didn't buy her the job, it didn't buy her the success. That is when you realize women for so long because they have been oppressed, they haven't been successful. The moment they got the same resources I did, or near to the same amount of resources that I did, they became instantaneously successful. That's when, ladies and gentlemen, the entire perception of women being inferior, women being weak, women not being as capable as men simply goes away, and as a result, cooperation and respect increases. Under your world, respect never increases, because under quota, men suspect that they took away my job. Why should I respect them? Under your world, every woman is seen as a charity case. Every success is few and far between, and then no real traction comes about. Under our world, real traction comes about, real respect comes about. Yes.
The problem is, we don't have the opposition of increasing scholarships and opportunities for women that can happen in either world. But the problem is, these things won't work because there's no universal acceptance of women being oppressed. The point of time at which we make that happen is when we reach out to men and bring them in.
Yeah. So, see, the thing is, it's not a trade-off that both can happen in world. Under your world, through quotas, 1 or 2 scholarships can happen. Under our world, those become 20. The sheer magnitude of the number of scholarships increase under our world. So don't paint the picture that it's the same thing exactly. But secondly, under your world, this is the problem with movements in general, like feminism, that every small battle that you win becomes a big victory. Like women are being allowed to, like, you know, breastfeed in office. Oh, what a big victory. Like that's what men do. They give you small achievements and they make you think like, oh, you won the entire friggin' battle. You are taught to settle for less. We can't settle for less, and that is why we need drastic action such as this within status quo, so that we can tell women, you deserve more, you deserve better. Under your world, like Michelle Abu said, activism fatigue comes to the point where you think like, oh, under your world, every small action that you achieve, every small success that you achieve, like, oh, I've achieved so much. So activism fatigue is actually a problem under your world, because where small achievements are taken as big achievements, and then we're like, oh, I've done my part. Under our world, because we're going for something radical, we're going for something drastic. Activism fatigue only takes place when you know that this radical action has paid off, or this drastic action has paid off. Under your world, people get tired. Under our world, people don't get tired. See, at the end of the day, if you are telling me that a simple mere increase in tax will make men more hostile, then if you try and decrease the wage gap, it will make men more hostile. If you try and pay men and women the same, if you ever try and pay women more, the men will become more hostile. So we need a world where equality is based, and this is the only way that can happen. Thank you very much.
The House recognized the contribution from the CG bench. Now moving to the last speakers of the debate, that is the closing of the session brief.
In order for the government bench to win, legitimate amount of change needs to be done by actually accumulating this extra taxation that these men are giving you, and that taxation to be effective enough and being high in quantity enough in order to bring about legitimate change, right? So, in order for that to be bringing about legitimate change, these funds are needed to be accessible by a larger amount of people, accessible by people who would otherwise not be able to go to schools to begin with, right? So when you come up and tell me about how from 5 scholarships you are going to be giving 20 scholarships, these 20 scholarships that are now being given are not going to be accessible by the people and the remote village in Senauga, right? So these 20 scholarships, the extra 15 scholarships will be accessible by people who would probably otherwise still be going to those colleges to begin with, right? Because this scholarship will be earned by those people who are not a poor daughter of a farmer. The scholarship will be earned by, say, maybe the marginally better off, well-off person who goes to a village, right? So when you come up and tell me about these funds, you will have to tell me how these funds are going to be, causing that additional change, right? Now, when you come up and tell us about different things, right? To begin with, you come up and talk about the wage gap, right? You say that maybe the wage gap is going to be solved. No. But now, you're actually going to be putting a lot of doubt under these qualifications of these women to begin with, because now, under your world, these women are going to be getting to go to this school. You'll be getting to get these degrees to begin with. It's because you paid for these things to begin with. So your degree now automatically loses a lot of value, right? When you come up and talk about how the small achievements like women being able to breastfeed in public is an achievement that a lot of people are going to be talking about, a huge ass achievement, right? That's when, imagine what will happen when your men think that, hey, guess what? Now these girls are going to get an actual education. What does that make it look like to you? It makes it look like just girls getting to go to this educational institutions isn't enough achievement to begin with. Next comes the places where these girls are actually going to be working. This is when they're actually going to be, coming forward to make some actual improvement, right? Now, see, here's the problem. What is the most important thing that we have discussed? We have told you about how the entire characterization that men are the only ones responsibility for these years of abuse is completely wrong, right? Because men might have been in the majority in the gender spectrum, conducting this abuse and oppression, but when you're ignoring that even other people from different genders have been conducting these abuses as well, is when you don't give them any incentive to be even considerate or sympathetic towards, these women, or empathic towards these women to bring about legitimate changes, right? Now, you send the message by singling out that just the men are the ones doing this. This is harmful in 2 levels. Firstly, these women tend to be more conservative and more pro-patriarchal to begin with, right? So, in a secondary level, putting their beloved men through unnecessary taxation makes them even more hardcore patriarchy supporters, right? So, people from other genders who were previously maybe not aggressive patriarchy sympathizers now become extremists because now their men are the ones who are being directly harmed, right? Now, we've discussed to you about how the school funds and the work funds directly relate to empowering women, right? their lack of, compensating because their sons or their families need to pay more money in order to fund education for these girls, right? When we discuss the developing countries, what do we realize? When you come up and talk about the Me Too movement, realize this, that even the more rational people, even the more, developed person with a liberal mindset will only be behind a cause as long as they're not directly singled out and targeted for being responsible for a cause to begin with. I've seen tons of status in the Me Too campaign where guys decided that, they decided to hijack the platform where women were coming out by saying that, hey, you know what, even I have been oppressed by a woman. In a case where they weren't even directly oppressed by the women to begin with. Now imagine when you victimize and you demonize this man into paying taxes, you make it look like these men are responsible for all the horrible things that's happening to the men, which might be true, but men don't like to hear it, right? So when they don't like to hear it, that's when they lose all the empathy and all the sympathy that have so far been, the littlest amount of which have so far been, kept in there, right? Now, why is it so important to keep this empathy? Why is it important to keep this empathy? Because in this sexist world, a man will only respect a woman when it probably comes from a fellow man, right? So when you are losing out the sympathizers, you're losing out this men who work with no change whatsoever happens, right? We've discussed to you about how this characterization is wrong. We've discussed to you about how it's extremely pathetic that we make it look like the change is only possible because certain men decided that they were going to pay and compensate for it. That propaganda, that narrative alone is very harmful because even if real change, revolutionary change does come around, it will be marked in history as a change that was bought because some men decided to pay out of their pockets. That is something we oppose.
It's all about to recognize the last speaker's speech, cross floors, shake hands, and it's all with women.
Let's get out.